it's me, Jay, your GM. I use he, him.
I'm Jerika. I use she, her.
I'm Matt. I use he, him.
I'm Mazz. I use they, them. And as you can hear, I'm bringing a lot of energy today.
That's a good energy.
So much energy. Look, it's 25 to 2 in the morning. Allow me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Allow me.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate your presence.
I should have just, done my pronouns and just gone, I'm here. I exist.
And this is Insight Check, where we delve into the dungeon of your bad decisions to retrieve the treasures of wisdoms.
That's true, we do.
Continue.
Sorry, I derailed it already.
That's okay.
No, we appreciate it. Deeply appreciate you being here tonight at this atrocious hour. So, hello, everybody. Welcome to the first Insight Check since the TTRPG world exploded. I guess it's always exploding for different reasons every week, honestly. That's how it feels lately.
Yeah.
The explosion has finally reached the outer realms where we reside.
Yes, this week, the Dungeon of Bad Decisions is all the TTRPG companies.
Mm-hmm.
All of them.
Yeah, all of them, yeah. At least the two big ones.
So, fast forward about 15 minutes. If you're done with all that, we will be debriefing a little bit of our game development activities. Mm-hmm. If you want to get our hot takes, keep on listening.
Oh, as hot as iced tea.
Tea? I love tea.
2 episodes ago, we talked to Nurse Normal about the Diversity in Dungeons & Dragons statement that was released by WotC. Unfortunately, right after they released this statement promising to be and do better, direct evidence of how poorly they had lived those values came out from Orion, who is Dungeon Commander on Twitter, who has been a guest of the show previously. They are a developer of tabletop RPGs. I know especially Air has been looking through their game recently and really remarking on how wonderfully it's set up.
That's Mutants in the Night. I'm also in that game. We just did character creation. If it wasn't last night, it was a couple nights ago. My brain is fried. Sorry.
Look, when you said we talked to Nurse 2 weeks ago, my brain spasmed. Because I thought that was a month or 2 ago.
I think it was 3 weeks that we had the recording and 2 weeks that the episode went up.
Nope. I remember it last year, like it was just yesterday.
But yes.
Still a relevant discussion, though. That's the whole point.
Orion, were hired on by WotC about a year ago as a contractor, and they posted a statement on their Twitter where they detailed their experiences within the company and the difficulties that they had being taken seriously as a designer, being given projects. They had their credit stolen for work that they did while they were at the company. And they also suffered from as they put it very eloquently, and you should really read the whole statement because it's very important and it's really good. But as they put it, the people there were very nice, but there wasn't respect. They were treated very kindly, but they weren't given respect. And that seems to be the main problem that they encountered. And the detailed account it's really bad. Especially stuff like stealing their work, hiring them. They described it as being a diversity hire, that they were hired on and then basically expected to sort of wait out the contract and then go away as a way to get good optics for Wizards of the Coast. But, that's horrifying in its own right. Yeah. And so but that's not the end of it. Because a separate statement was also released around the same time about problematic elements within the Magic the Gathering community, which was...
Is this the Wizards I Know by Z Beg?
Yes, The Wizards I Know by Zayam Beg, which is another document that you should definitely check out because it is full of a detailed, accurate account of difficulties within the Magic the Gathering community for Black players to get the respect that they deserve, invitations to events that they should be getting at their level, and then suddenly they're trotted out as a representation of how diverse the community is when it's convenient, and then they are almost immediately forgotten when those events are over. It is another really grim look behind the curtains of Wizards' work culture and the way that they interact with important members of the community. Another thing that I didn't talk about with Orion is that there's also a really strong history for Wizards of hiring contractors who they never promote to actual salaried long-term employees and keeping those contracts just rolling year after year, where the employees never have the stability of a long-term position. They never have the stability of all the benefits that come with working for the company proper. And so all of this combined created a really difficult situation. I mean, we're already right in the middle of, and this is not over, Black lives still matter. We're in the middle of Black Lives Matter. We're all suddenly aware of how deep the problems go in our community, how thin on the ground the support is for creators of color, Indigenous creators, Black creators.
And we've seen that reflected in a sort of naive approach to race relations in the rules that could be solved by hiring diversely and not just for show.
Right. I know at the time that it came out, the Adventures of Cholt were widely criticized for having this white savior narrative at the center of the story, where heroes from outside came into this largely person of color area and saved them from the dangers that they were in because they were incapable of handling the problems on their own. And that's a trope that goes as far back as stories, where these white heroic figures come in and rescue the naive native who cannot handle things themselves. And so, and WotC, they leaned right into it. They didn't even, and these are the kinds of things that if you have a diverse staff, they can be like, oh, actually, I know about that. And even if you have a diverse staff, as we know, WotC, we know that there is some diversity in WotC, but what we learned from Orion's message is that if you raise those issues, you're going to either be harmed by it in your career or you're going to be ignored. Or if you raise a valid issue that is worthwhile, you might just have your ideas stolen and used by someone else. And not even get the credit for your work. So we know that the culture isn't there to support a person of color who does raise these issues in the company. So even if they have some diversity at the lowest level, they're not promoting that diversity up through the management positions. They're not giving them the support that they need long term to actually be effective and to feel safe in communicating their issues. And, something we need to acknowledge here, like this podcast is very white.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And the community that we're in is extremely white as well. We met as fans of Penny Arcade, which is a very largely white community. And then we kind of became a subsection of that, of close friends who enjoyed hanging out with each other and talking with each other. And our community is largely white as well. And,
there are systemic reasons for...
Right. Yeah, have we done enough to make our place as inviting as possible for persons of color? Have we done enough to say that they're welcome here? Have we done enough to make a place when they arrive that they feel that they can speak their mind safely? And, are we making the community better, or are we just sort of cruising along and then going, well, I don't see any persons of color, so I don't know what I can do about it. Oh, it's not my problem. I don't see any. If there were any around, I would certainly, it's not good enough, right? It's not good enough.
I have to say I've started playing 2 games recently with 2 of our cast members. One of them is here with us, Mazz and Air. And in the process of starting both of those games, the discussion has been had of the session 0 discussion has been had of, what sort of content are you uncomfortable with? And I have to say, this is the first time that I've had that discussion twice, and so specifically. And so I think there are people here in this community
Yeah.
that are doing their best to run open and inclusive games that are the least problematic they can be.
Right. Yeah. I would certainly hope that we're creating a space that is safe for anyone to come forward in. And, you know, my solemn vow to anyone listening to this is if, you know, there is anything that is, you know, if you are a person of color or any kind of person, and there's something that's happening in our community that is troubling to you, that's concerning to you, please let us know. I mean, we don't have any board members to answer to. We can just change shit whenever we want. We
Don't have any investors.
Right.
Period.
We can just fix shit whenever we want. So if you have something that you want to say, like, I want you to know, like, I can speak only for myself, and I can say I love criticism. It's important to take it, because you don't grow by never being challenged. And there are times where you get challenged and you may become defensive, and that's something you got to grow out of. And certainly I've done it. I'm guilty of doing it, where somebody's challenged me on something and I've been like, fuck you. And then I had to come back later and be like, oh, no, they were looking after my best interests, and I needed to grow up and accept that. And I hope that if you come to me and I hear your complaints, I will be able to graciously accept them and learn from them, because that's the sort of commitment that we need if we're going to become a community that's worth being a part of. If anybody listening to this has any issues or any concerns or just like things that we could do, or places that we could go, people who we could support, people in our community who maybe don't feel supported, just come and talk to us and let us know, and let us be a part of raising up the voices in our community that maybe don't feel heard all the time, because the issue is systemic. It's not like we can fix it at that level, but we can at least make our community a place that is free of some of those problems. Because that's really all we control, right? We control our community. We don't get to write the rules of the game. We don't get to...
Well... do we?
Well, actually.
That's true. I think that for a lot of people right now, there's a lot of like confusing feelings, a lot of very ugly, gross feelings right now for the game. And so there was a weekend a few weeks back where we were all sitting around going, oh my God, another thing. And then Action Economist came to me and was like, hey, I feel like this community could make a game.
Action Economist came to the Discord.
Oh, that's true.
Wasn't to you, Jay.
They came to Air first of everybody, actually, yeah. Action Economist came and said...
a criticism, it's not always about you, my friend.
That's true.
But we love you anyway.
What did Action Economist say?
Action Economist came to the Discord and said, hey, I think this community could make a game. Because, they know that we're all super nerds and we love games. And I had been working on a document over the weekend, and I had sent it to Air. And so Air, again, playing the manipulator, met us up.
I don't know if that's the role I would...
So I threw...
Matchmaker?
Another.
I dropped this game like a cat delivers a dead bird. I was like, here's this thing. I'm never going to do anything with it. It sucks and it's bad. Now it's yours.
You're welcome.
And they were like, actually, this is bones. We can build off of this. And it has been, oh my gosh, one of the most fun and like fulfilling things I've ever been a part of. That first week was wild.
How long is the document now?
Oh my goodness, that's a good question, actually.
60?
I was going to say 62.
Now, as somebody who has kept their head out entirely of this, it has somewhat appeared to be like the idiom of like a camel is a horse built by committee. Yeah. But like I think initially
not a lot of humps in it. You're right, Matt. Well,
58 pages according to the slide doc. Very funnily, it hasn't grown much over the last few weeks. Oh, actually, that's because all the spells and stuff are stored externally. Anyway.
But like it started off as, okay, well, how do we strip out the problematic things of D&D, or how do we make this more our own and less D&D, but still playable for people who are like used to D&D.
I would say the
Right?
first way you described it is how it started, and the second way you described it is how it is now.
Yeah, and I will occasionally like poke my head into the little game dev channel, and it's not really like a little channel. I mean, all channels are basically the same size, but like I poke my head in, and in it is always a sprawling idea of things, and it's like, great, add it to the document, and I can't imagine what's going on in this document, but it feels like some terrible Hydra waiting.
Well, Jay had an outline in a spreadsheet at one point where we kind of outlined the sort of all the sections that you kind of need for this sort of game. And so that's been sort of our outline, if you will, like our summary.
So as it exists now, somebody give me the elevator pitch for your game.
So the game as it is now currently has 3 ability scores: heart, focus, and
Body.
yes. So the idea is that you can use these 3 scores to generate 14 abilities, which are your skills, and then so basically the core of D&D with ability scores and skills, that's still there, but we've changed a little bit how the dice system works. We got rid of proficiency and things like that. Basically, this is how it works. If you are proficient in a skill, you get advantage on the roll. When you make a roll, all you add is the relevant ability score. So, for example, if I'm going to make a recall check, I will add my focus, and that's it. If I am proficient in recall, then I roll with advantage. So being good at recall just basically gives me 2 dice to try to make a good result. All skill checks are done against a standardized list of outcomes. So there are no DCs, which you set with each roll.
You mean the standard scale?
Right. 0 to 9 is a failure. 10 to 14 is a success, but something bad happens. I suppose this is a success with consequences.
Well, setback.
All right. 15 to 19 is a true success, probably the most boring outcome on the die, but always a pleasure to see when you are the player. And then a 20 or above is a success and. So if a 10 to 14 is a success, but 20 to infinity is a success and. So and you get something extra. And this is true even for attacks against an enemy.
I am looking forward to rolling an infinity dice.
There's got to be a D20 where the 20 is an infinity. So
How
I'm sure
big
it's out there.
would an infinity dice be?
Infinite, yeah.
Very good. Your maths is strong.
The maths is strong with this one.
So if you make an attack check, for an example, if you get a 20 or above, you get to roll an extra weapon die. So it's like a mini crit.
Pew pew.
If you roll a 10 to 14, Mazz actually helped develop this system where enemies get abilities called escalations. And this is where you can build into enemies those things that make different enemies unique. So, for example, if you're fighting a slime, it might split in 2. And that is an example that Mazz came up with for how escalations can work.
I had an idea. Just one.
Un idea.
Sometimes that's all you need.
Escalations are your success but. So you succeeded in hitting the enemy, but the enemy got to do something interesting.
Now
back
they
to you.
have 8 heads.
Right. On a Hydra,
More
it might
than
be
they
developing a
had
new
before.
head. Yeah, that's actually a good idea.
You hit the enemy, but while you were doing that, you were distracted and one of its tentacles stole your iPhone.
Dunk.
My iPhone, no. Not again, no.
Now you cannot TikTok.
Oh no.
That'll really hurt Matt. TikTok's all that is holding Matt together at this point.
God, that
It's all he's got.
Uh-oh.
I don't hear any denial.
You can't see it, but it's the middle distance. Oh God, he's right. Middle distance stare.
Yeah. But yeah, so skill checks work that way. And then there are ability checks, which is a separate set, which are all opposed. So this is your saving throws. So if I'm casting a spell against another wizard, I roll to set the DC, so to speak.
It's like a wizard duel.
Right. And they roll to try and overcome my DC.
Now, Jay, this is a very controversial question.
Okay.
What are the classes in this game? We went back and forth about this.
Yeah. I was pretty hard about 4 classes when it started out. Some people wanted to dissolve it down more. Some people wanted to expand it more. But I felt like fighter, rogue, wizard, cleric were the sort of quintessential 4 class. I felt like those were the ones that, like, if you boiled D&D down all the way and really got all the fat out and you just had the juicy, tender meat at the middle, those 4 classes are best representative of the core identity.
You mean fighting man, thief, and wizard?
Magic man.
And
It
magic
does.
guy?
It does so happen that they are also the first 4 classes. Yes.
Now, I'm going to ask another leading question. Is there multi-classing in this game?
What an interesting question. There is not multi-classing in it as it currently stands, but we have a different approach to taking on the identity of multiple classes. So your paladins, your bards, your berserkers, as we're calling them, your wardens, as we're calling them. Wardens are our version of the druid. Martial artist is our version of the monk. These different classes have become subclasses. And the interesting way that we figured out to approach this was that any class can take any subclass. So
What is the most tantalizing class, subclass, sort of from left field that you're interested in someone exploring at some point?
So we divorced bonus actions from actions by making them flourishes. And so I would actually say wizard and monk are looking pretty good together right now.
Wizard and martial artist?
Shoot. Yes, wizard and martial artists are looking pretty good together because you can cast that spell as an action and then bonus action punch somebody. And still get all the reaction stuff from the martial artist that lets you reduce damage, which helps the wizard who's very weak.
Muscle wizard.
Yeah, punch wizard.
Berserker and wizard actually go together as well because we took out raging, which prevents you from spellcasting, and instead we played around with our to hit chart. So now when you take a 10 to 14 from an enemy, you take half damage. So when they hit, but with consequences, they hit you for half damage. So it's basically like a berserker's version of an escalation. They get to just tank that damage and be a little bit beefier. Air has lovingly titled it, "Stop Trying to Hit Me and Hit Me."
Air, I have to say, for no other reason, Air's names of features are a delight to read.
It makes me really want to go through all the classes and give them all like weirder names. I've given them all very technical names as if they were D&D classes, but maybe we should just have fun with the names.
I think we should definitely have fun. I think Super Not the Best might have some insight there, but we'll see.
And that's been one of the greatest parts of doing all this is the channel is just a channel in our Discord. Anybody can come in at any time and offer their insights. And we've had a dozen, 24 people just filter through at some point and offer some little piece of insight. And that's all part of the game now. Like, it's all growing and sprawling outwards with all these different ideas. And then me and Air, an action economist, are getting really nitty gritty with the technical stuff about, like, okay, we've got this feature and this feature and this feature, but how do we handle this? And then I'll be like, okay, well, we need to redesign everything to handle that now.
And in light of sort of the tenets of the game, which you talked about, like the standard scale and the ability scores and how skill checks work. Like, how does that actually translate in the game? Which I think are probably the most interesting discussions to be a fly on the wall for.
Yeah, one of the really challenging ones was when we were discussing spell saves, because it basically it required a full redesign of how we handle rolls, because spell saves, basically we had 2 options. We could put our chart.
Sorry.
We could use our chart of 0 to 9, 10 to 14, 15 to 19, 20 plus. But the thing is, if we did that, the person receiving the spell would not be rolling anything in regards to the spell that is affecting them.
Yeah.
The person attacking with spells would be rolling for the other person's results. And that felt weird to us because, you know, if you're getting feeble-minded and a person says, I cast Feeble Mind on you, I rolled really well, you're feeble-minded, it doesn't feel good because there was nothing you could do about it.
Right.
So if we make it a contested roll, at least there's that chance of the D20 hitting the 20 and just succeeding automatically.
Or if it's, you know, if it's let's say it's a focus-based roll, you know, and I don't want to be feeble-minded any which way, I will do my best to boost, you know, my focus or whatever. So I have some control over.
Right. And like,
Possibly.
there's always that wild card element of the die where even if they have advantage on the check and they roll, you know, 2 die and they might get a 2 and 3 and their +5 only gets them to 8. And then you just happen to roll a 10 and win. Even though you have no bonus to that ability score, the dice are a wild card and can let you succeed even at dramatically bad odds. Which I think feels good with really powerful high-level magic that can basically, like, one-shot you or take half your hit points away. It feels good to always have a chance that you're never completely doomed before. Because, I mean, like, with current saving throws, there's a point in the game where you just can't make certain saves anymore. Like, after level 10, you know, those saves that you're not proficient in, you can just basically forget about rolling for them. Because the DC for the enemy wizard is, like, 23. And you have a -1 modifier. So the highest
Whenever I fight dragons, I feel this problem.
Right. So the highest you can get is a 19. So like you might as well not even roll. It's like it's pointless. So I think that this solves that.
I have one more question. And then if any of the other prosecutors on this call want to cross-examine the witness, they should feel free to. Is there a place in this game for the lucky feat?
That's a good question. We actually have a list of 63 feats, and I have not even looked at it.
Do you think it would be too much of a boon to the person who takes it?
So we have basically advantage in our version of the game comes from proficiency. So effectively, lucky would just be making you proficient at 3 things per day. So I don't necessarily think it would be game breaking, although it will be still very powerful. But I don't think it's any worse than it is in 5th edition. I don't think it'd be any more broken.
You could cut it down to less times per day.
That's true. Or you could set the times per day on like a level scale. So you only get those 3 when you're 15 or something like that.
It's actually 6S feats, not 65 feet.
Oh, is that it?
There's only maybe 20 feats on this list so far.
It's a raw living document, unedited.
Demo has been working very hard on those. And Demo also put in a Herculean effort on figuring out challenge rating and how 5th edition handles it and how we can handle it in a way that makes sense. And they did all the math on, like, if we want a combat to go this long on average and we want the heroes to win on average, then they need to have these stats at this level. And it is, I mean...
That's really helpful.
Yeah, I can't fathom doing that. Like, it would be so exhausting to me to try for that, but they did it, and it works as best we know. I mean, obviously we haven't gotten to the playtesting yet. That is the next step because we have.
I think Action Economist is running a game.
Yeah.
In 2 nights from now.
Action Economist put in their own Herculean effort, going through the entire document and tidying it up today. They went through, and it looks so good. Oh my gosh. They use specialized indentation markers that are all like customized and nice. And it's just very tidy and it makes my heart sing. Another thing we did, we changed race to ancestry, and we also introduced the ability to customize your own ancestry based on your preferences. So one thing that we got a lot of feedback on was almost everybody feels uncomfortable with putting ability scores in your race. So we got rid of that. No ability scores come from your ancestry. Instead, things that like your body would do come from your ancestry. So
Like dark.
dark vision, other kinds of senses, magic resistance. If you're like a magical creature that resists magic.
Say magic one more time.
Magic.
I dare you.
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
I'm just kidding. It's fine.
But yeah, so we've also created one that's just called Create Your Own, and you can literally take any 3 from any other ancestry and make your own version of my version of the dwarf isn't like this. My version of the dwarf isn't tough. My version of the dwarf is actually very fragile, and so I took these other traits instead.
Could finally make a Captain Carrot dwarf.
Exactly.
Captain Carrot is a very tall, lanky dwarf from Discworld.
Terrible.
But yeah, you can, so that was another product of a very intense discussion where we got really into the weeds about like ancestry. Is it okay? Like, should we at all? And the ultimate conclusion that the group came to was that having some guidance helps people to imagine which things should be in a world.
Yeah.
So, for example, for a new GM who is just starting out, having a list of ancestries helps them build their world. Okay, these things are in the world, so I need to create places for each of them. And that's certainly how I started making my world. I took all the races from D&D and I just started looking at I started making a map and being like, okay, well, I need a place for elves. Here's where elves live. I need a place for dwarves. Here's where dwarves live. And so for a new DM, it's useful to have that list, but we shouldn't be prescriptive with our ancestry telling you what you are. We should be telling you this is the basic model. But you can trick this thing out with whatever features you want. You can customize and rearrange and remix everything and truly make it your own. And so, yeah, I think almost everywhere in the game we have tried to give the player those choices. That's why you can have any subclass with any class, because we want you to be able to be a fighting wizard, a punch wizard, as Mazz put it.
Yeah, one thing I have really been enjoying with it is the fact that everyone has got such different skills and there's a place for everyone to contribute. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't do the technical crunchy stuff that like you and Air and Demo did. Mm-hmm. But I can, my favourite thing is like, I sort of like swing in, read it all, say something half joking, and then Jay's like, oh, that's a great idea, let's do that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jay's main skill, in addition to just writing a bunch of things, is, yeah, let's do that.
I think there's an unincredulousness about Jay that makes him a very good person to just throw spaghetti at and see if it sticks.
I try to take every suggestion very seriously and really consider its merits, because you never know when somebody's got the better idea.
Sure.
And so if you're dismissive of people, first of all, they're not going to come back and offer you more ideas.
Yeah, for sure. They're not going to offer you more what?
Ideas.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Cool.
They're not going to offer you more ideas. But second of all, they're not going to, you're never going to find the best design that way, because you're going to throw out the best design thinking you've already got it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
When do you know when to stop?
That's the real question.
I should probably make more serious suggestions then and not just like half-assed things.
It's up to you. However much you feel comfortable.
You joke about half-assing things, but most of your ideas are really good and get implemented because you have very keen insight. You may not want to sit there and fuddle with all the numbers and knobs and just adjusting it right. But on the big scale, you can identify this is a problem. We should fix this in this interesting way. And it's like, oh yeah, we should. And then I'll go in and twist all the knobs and dials until it eventually works in the math.
See, Mazz half-asses more than most people do with their whole ass.
We gotta start using our whole ass, everybody.
Kate Welch, we're bringing it back.
She got the wisdom.
I used to use my whole ass, and then I left that job, and they replaced me with 2 people. So it's not. That's a true story.
Most people just use half of their.
They replaced you with. They took 2 people to do your old job. Oh my God.
To be fair, I did have a massive breakdown.
Well, yeah, I can imagine if you were doing the work of 2 people, then yeah. Holy cow.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Is it done yet?
We have gotten everything to level 4, I think, is playable. Every class has a level 1 and a level 3 feature. Every subclass has a level 2 feature, and then a level 4 is your first feat. And we've got feats ready. So I think it is playable up to level 4. And that is...
How many levels are you planning on going to?
We intend to keep the same traditional 20 D&D levels.
I have a question. Did we figure out how to level yet?
I think we're just using milestone for now, but we haven't... I don't think actually that there is anything in the document currently about gaining XP.
It's a waste of everyone's time. You level up when the DM says, go for it.
I don't think there are any rules about when to level up yet. That is something that we should definitely cover. Edit this out, Jay.
Don't edit this out. Keep it in.
We still have a lot of work left to do, but I think that we've done a lot of really good work so far. And I think Jay mentioned this at one point, that this document wouldn't have gotten as far as it had if it was just Jay in a vacuum.
Oh, for sure. No way.
We're all working together, and that there are people who really want to see this playable is really helpful.
The first week, I dove in really hard, finding all the mechanical stuff that we needed to make a combat system work, and ripping the guts out of D&D basically, and rearranging them into our system and figuring out how they work with our checks. And for that first week, I worked really, really hard. I was just always doing this. And then after that, I have kind of taken my hands off the steering wheel and the wheel entirely, like stepped out of the car, and it just kept going without me. People just stepped right in there. Action Economist was hugely important for that.
Do we need to come and pick you up, Jay?
Air has been really helpful, even though they vehemently denied getting involved at first. They were like, I'm not.
I also just compliment our own Jerika here.
Oh, yeah.
On her beautiful aesthetic work, including finding colour schemes that
oh my gosh,
for colourblind people.
It's important to me that everything is accessible.
And not... can I just say that one of the proudest moments I've ever had, like it was like a child being born into the world. One of the proudest moments I ever had was seeing the character.
You just take your hand off the wheel.
Yeah. No, it was seeing the character sheet for the first time. Oh, I felt such an intense feeling of happiness seeing Jerika's character sheet. Like you could actually make a character. You had little columns for everything, and you could just plug in numbers and play the game.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually playable at that time, but it was like conceptually, it was becoming. It was like watching an image come into focus. It's like now you can start to see the details. It's starting to resolve. You're starting to see that there's a game here and all this.
I have to say that it's been a delight to work with Scout.
Oh yeah, Scout.
Scout's got all the very interesting ideas and always the enthusiasm boundless. So that's fun.
The thing about Scout is that they're really unafraid to challenge preconceptions about the game, and because of that, you end up fighting some of the same battles over and over again. But when you get to the other side, you know more about why you're doing the thing that you're doing, and whether you're doing it just for tradition's sake or whether you're doing it because it actually helps the game. And I think that that's so important, and it's such a difficult, like, I could never hire for that skill, right? If this were a job, I could never hire for seeing the negative space in a game. Like, the space that the game doesn't occupy and why it doesn't occupy that space. Like, but Scout has it. Like, they can just walk into a conversation and be like, yeah, but why aren't you doing it this way? And I'll be like, why aren't we doing it that way? And even if it is correct, even if the way that we're doing it is correct, knowing why we're not doing it the other way is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. And then they've done all the writing for vehicles and horses and things like that. They are really passionate about that kind of thing. So they've taken point on that. Very nice.
One of the things I've really liked about people having those sorts of conversations and pushing back against each other is the language we're choosing and using. Which words are, acceptable, because one of my pet peeves is certain ableist terms. And so we've looked at spells that remove agency and whether they're acceptable, and if they are acceptable, what language do we use around those, and for conditions, what language is okay there and what's not ableist and what is. So I really liked that, because it had everyone examining themselves at the same time as the game.
Yeah, I had a very lengthy. It actually didn't even happen in the channel. It happened in my my Monday game of D&D. I posted an excerpt of our ability scores and our character sheet because I was proud of it and I was bragging about it. I was like, oh my gosh, look at this thing. Oh, it's coming together. And they were like, Oh, ability scores are bad, actually. And we had a whole debate about it. I won't say it's like not like a debate, like I was fighting them over it, but like it was a whole conversation where they were just like, well, for this and this reason, you know, it can be very problematic. And the only thing that really changed out of that conversation, first of all, we completely reworked all the wording of our ability scores so that it emphasized that these were the result of training in a skill as opposed to anything inherent to a person. So, you know, you're not born with a high body, a high focus, or a high heart. Those are skills that you train over the course of a life of dedicated practice. And that distinction is meaningful because it de-emphasizes physical ability. Like a disabled person could have high body because they trained to be skilled in spite of physical limitations at birth. And that training is more important in our games world than any kind of limitations that anything else would put on you. That's the kind of world that we're creating through the fiction of our rules. That the training, that the intent, that the desire to be good at a thing is the most important.
It's not a fiction because I am pretty sure there are Paralympic athletes that are much fitter than me, if all of them are fitter than me.
For sure.
You know, I just I dance for 2 minutes and fall over. So, yeah, definitely training. It's good.
Originally, focus was called mind, and they pointed out to me that you know, like calling one of your ability scores mind could have some, you know, meaning behind it. Like, oh, you have a low mind. Oh, you have a small mind. Like it's not good. So we changed it to focus to better reflect that these mental skills don't necessarily require being born smart, but that require your attention, your focus, your dedicated study, that kind of thing, which is a little kinder. But yeah, ability scores are really, by the way, challenging to figure out the language around because it's hard not to fall into the pitfalls. If you can avoid putting ability scores in your game, I recommend it because...
Okay, so new update to the game, ability scores out.
Unfortunately.
Just go ahead and...
I made that argument as strong as I could one day, and Jay was like, no, you need to actually have like an avatar in this world of like cooperative world building, because otherwise like who are you? Like what is your investment in this world if you don't have a physicality?
One of the limitations on our game that I set, this is entirely my fault and my call at the beginning of the design. So if it strikes you as like being unpleasant, the buck stops here. I wanted this to end up being a tactical RPG with advancement. So that puts in certain limitations because once you have tactics involved, you need, in order for tactics to be meaningful, everybody needs to sort of understand the rules of the world and how things are going to interact with other things and what an enemy might be good at. And if they're good at that, it might mean that they're bad at this other thing. And so I needed ability scores for that reason. In order for a wizard who casts a spell on a enemy, you know, if the enemy rolls with a huge modifier, the wizard now knows that they have a huge modifier in that, so they can't have a huge modifier in these other two skills that they can now target with the secondary spell next round. And it allows people to make these sort of informed choices. But it does introduce certain difficult elements into the game as well. And ultimately, I decided that trade-off was one I was willing to make. So everybody has agreed with that for now. And so the game is going ahead like that. But if you're starting a game, here's my warning, ability scores, difficult. They require a lot of extra work to be careful around. Because you don't want to create a world where people are punished for things that are not things that are outside of your control. Anybody else got anything that they'd like to throw in at the last minute? Like a final point they'd like to hit? If anybody wants to playtest the game, please come by the Game Dev channel. We will be probably running playtests for a little while. It's really important that we get fresh eyes on the document to read it and tell us what doesn't make sense in like a human language.
It's currently July 2020, so
that's
a little while from July 2020 for some content.
Yeah. If you would enjoy playing a new system, it's about 60 pages, probably with all things actually put into the document. It'll be around 70 pages, but really the stuff that you need to care about is only about 15 to 20 pages. And so, yeah, if you do enjoy play testing it, seeing what we've made, telling us where it's broken, what things need to be put in, or just helping us to finish creating the game, because there's still a lot of game left to be made, and this is a living document, so it will change. So with your input and feedback, we can always fix things, because we are not a corporation, and so we can just do whatever we want whenever we want. We got no...
You hate socialism.
Yeah.
Don't play our game. It's made by the community for the community.
That's right. That's true.
Property is theft.
Yeah, for real.
The means of the production in the hands of the workers.
As always, we'd like to thank Burnham for making our faces. Without you, we would not have faces. That is at BERNUMMM. Commissions are, I actually think, currently open at this time.
Open!
We'd like to thank Vinswept for the intro, Never Stand Alone, and outro. And we'd also like to thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, please leave a comment anywhere that you enjoyed it, on a podcast site or on Twitter or in our Discord.
Write it on your sidewalk in chalk.
Somebody else's
Spray paint it on a wall in graffiti.
Wherever.
Scratch it into a log.
If you'd like to follow us, you can do that at Insight Check Pod on Twitter. You can also find our Discord there, where you can hop in and join our game dev channel, as we've mentioned multiple times throughout the episode. And as always, we're answering your cues
From our collective A's. Sis.
Was.
Inside.
Check.
And as always, we want to thank Burnham for making the podcast. Nope.
Thank you, Burnham.
I mean, as always, thank you, Burnham.
You might have
our faces make
you
this
might have
podcast
a silent hand, an invisible hand working through all of us. I do understand the control you have on my cerebellum every day.
Jerika, you've just lost the Easter egg this week.
We want to thank... Okay. As always, we want to thank Burnham for making the art.
Jay, we wrote this down in case you need it.